بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear sisters, my dear daughters and sons, welcome back to a new episode of Mothers of Believers. You remember last time we were with our mother Ummu Salama, and if you remember that Ummu Salama was from a tribe in Mecca, and the tribe name is Makhzoom. Ummu Salama married to her first husband, Abu Salama, and both of them embraced Islam, we mentioned, and they have the two hijras, the first hijrah to Ethiopia or Al-Habasha, and they returned back to Mecca. And we mentioned that after they returned back, they found Mecca still having the disbelievers. They are torturing the new Muslims, and the society was very stressful in Mecca. And there was an order from the Prophet ﷺ for the Muslims in Mecca to migrate to Medina. And we mentioned the tragedy that happened while she and her husband and her son on their way to Medina, how the tribe from her family, they came and intercepted them, and they forced her and her son to go back to Mecca, and they just left her husband to go only alone to Al-Madinah. And this is actually what we stopped last time. Today, inshallah, we're going to continue this story about what happened after that. Well, actually, it was more difficulty. The story has more difficulty on Salama, as after her relatives, they took her and returned her to Mecca. They even separated her from her son. They separated the child from his mother and gave the child to another family away from her. You can imagine how the feelings of a mother of her baby being taken from her, and she's being separated from her husband forcibly. And the situation is becoming more and more difficult on Ummu Salama. She's alone now in Mecca, and she stayed by this situation for 1 year. Throughout the whole year, each morning, Ummu Salama climbed to the place on the Safa hill or in the Safa mountain called Al-Abtah, and she turned towards the Kaaba and in tears cursed her relatives who had broken the arm of her unweaned baby and broke up her family. So we can feel how much Sayyiddah Ummu Salama suffered in order to migrate to Medina, in order to start a new life away from the hell of Mecca at that time. After 1 year, what happened? Subhanallah, she kept, of course, making dua. She kept asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve her and to find a way for her. And at the end of the year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to her that make one of her relatives seeing her in this state. So one of the family of Al-Mughira, which is her tribe, felt sorry, asked about her situation, and then he went to the relatives of Ummu Salama and protested them and said, you have separated this poor woman from her husband and from her son. Why do you still keep her and not releasing her? Thereupon her relatives permitted Salama at last to take her child, and they told her, if you want to go, you can go to your husband. After 1 year of suffering. So at last, Salama and her son were united together, and they were set free. But how would they go to Medina? They are still in Mecca, and they want to go to Medina on their own. How could they endure such a difficult, troublesome, and dangerous journey under the circumstances of those days? We know that those days, actually, traveling was not an easy thing to carry on, especially for a lady alone. It's not safe at all, because actually it is a desert. It's just the road is a desert from Mecca to Al Medina, and a lot of thefts and thieves and robbers she might find, or she might face. And moreover, sometimes those thieves may take her as captured, and capture her as captive. I mean, take her as captives, and she may be to be like in slave, or like a servant. So it was a lot of fears, actually, for a single lady to travel alone in this unknown. For her, it was unknown. But what Salama, our mother, what she decided? Actually, she narrated that her experience by herself, and she mentioned that she decided to go alone. She decided to go alone with her baby to Al Medina. So she mentioned, I prepared my camel and placed my son into the camel litter. Then I set out to reach my husband in Medina. I had nobody accompanying me. Remember that the duration of the journey from Mecca to Medina is around 3 to 4 days. 3 to 4 days in the desert. And you can imagine when it is coming to sunset and the darkness come, how it will be very fearful, and something which is very, you cannot imagine how dangerous the situation is. And of course, she thought of all these things and of all these possibilities, but actually the light of iman and of the belief in her heart was more than any other difficulties, and more than anything she couldn't think of, except that she has to migrate and to obey the order of the Prophet ﷺ to migrate to Medina. This is what being overwhelmed. She's been overwhelmed by that. She didn't think about any dangers or any threats that she may face during her journey. So what happened? She mentioned, when I reached the place called Tan'im. Tan'im, actually, this is a place just around 10 kilometers away from Al-Haram, or from Kaaba. When you go, inshallah, for Umrah or Hajj, you will find that there is a masjid there, or a mosque, and this masjid called Masjid at-Tan'im. So it is at the border of the Haram. The end of the border of the Haram is this masjid, or this place. So when she reached this place, she met a man called Uthman ibn Talha from Abdul Dar family. He was disbeliever. He was not a Muslim at that time. He embraced Islam later, but at that time, he was not Muslim. She said, he asked me, Oh, Salama, where are you going? I said, I want to go to Medina to my husband. So he inquired, don't you have anyone with you? Then I replied, no, I have no one other than Allah and this child of mine. Then he said, I swear by Allah that you will not be left alone. He held my camel from its bridle and set off with me. I swear to Allah that I haven't seen anyone in the Arabs as benevolent as him. Actually, Osman, having this situation that he took her and he accompanied her till she reaches Al-Medina, and he went back when he just let her settle in Medina and be sure that everything is okay for her, he returned back to Mecca. And at that time, he was still not Muslim. But subhanallah, he was a good and kind man, polite man. He was very, as she mentioned, she was benevolent to her. And later on, subhanallah, Uthman embraced Islam and became from Muslims. Now, Sayyiddah Salama, lastly, she arrived al-Madinah, and she settled there, and she lived a peaceful life with her husband, Abu Salama. She was occupied with educating and raising her children. She was a woman who likes poetry, who was clever, wise, and cultured. At the same time, she was very beautiful. Abu Salama actually also was a very kind husband for her, and they have a wonderful life together, to the degree that he loved her so much, made a prayer for Allah that, oh Allah, after my death, grant Sayyiddah Salama with a more blessed husband who will not sadden or hurt her. See, he was loving her to the degree that he was thinking that if he died, he wished that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to recompense her with a more blessed husband than him. And this is what happened. Abu Salama participated in the battles of Badr and Uhud with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And he was wounded in the arm by an arrow that had been shot by the polytheists during the Battle of Uhud. And after a month of being treated, the wound closed, and it was assumed that his wound being healed. However, Abu Salama's wound, which they thought it was healed, reopened during Sariya. Sariya is like a skirmish or like a troop of less than 30 Muslims for defending part of Medina. He went with them, and he was sent there, and then he was injured again in the same place of the old wound, and his previous wound opened and he lost a lot of blood, and he passed away. The Prophet ﷺ prayed for him, and his death was in the 4th year of Hijrah. The Prophet ﷺ was greatly sad about his death, and he made dua for him that, oh Allah, forgive Abu Salama and make him one of those who are close to you. Guard over those who remain behind. Forgive us and forgive him, O Lord of the worlds. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was the one to lead the funeral prayer himself for Abu Salama. Now, of course, we can imagine the feelings of Salama after her beloved husband passed away. She was very sad, and she suffered great sorrow and grief. It was said that she kept cried for days when she remembering Abu Salama. And in referring of those days, Sayyiddah Salama is saying, one day, my husband Abu Salama returned from being with the Prophet ﷺ, and he mentioned to her, I have heard something from the Prophet that has made me very happy. So what was this something? The Prophet said, when a Muslim experiences a trouble or disaster, they should say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to Allah, and to Him we will return. Then they should say, oh Allah, bless us with reward and recompense for this calamity. Grant that I am one who attains what it is more blessed. Allahumma ajirni fi musibati wa khlufni khayran minha. This what we should say if there is a calamity or a great disaster happened, we say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allahumma ajirni fi musibati wa akhlufni khayran minha. So Salama kept saying that dua, kept saying Allahumma ajirni fi musibati wa akhlufni khayran minha. And then every time she asked herself, who could be more blessed than Abu Salama, that Allah may recompense me? How Allah will recompense me? Who is more blessed than Abu Salama? She didn't think about the Prophet at all, that he could be, yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have for her this great things that he is saving for her. So she mentioned that Allah gave me what was more blessed and married me to Prophet Muhammad. This is according to her narration. After our mother, Sayyiddah Ummu Salama's period of Iddah, Iddah is a waiting period. Iddah is the period that the widow should be spent without marriage before marrying to another person after her husband passed away. If her husband passed away, she should stay for 4 months and 10 days. 4 months and 10 days, she shouldn't have any engagement or any contract of marriage or any beginning of steps of marriage, as this is the time of mourning. She should wait in this time 4 months and 10 days. For the widow, 4 months and 10 days before she start any steps of marriage. So after this time passed by Sayyiddah Salama, she received 2 proposals from a very well respected and known companions, Abu Bakr and Umar ibn al-Khattab. But she politely refused. What I want to say that it was the way that the Sahaba, all of them do. When some of them being martyred in the battles, because we know that their stay in Medina was not a picnic. It was not something that they just escaped from the torture of the disbelievers in Mecca to find a paradise in Medina. Actually, what happened in Medina was a series of battles in the beginning of the Islamic State, and how they postulated with their blood and with their souls the beginning of this deen and beginning of this religion and the beginning of all the Islamic conquests that happened after that. So it was the tradition that if one of the Sahaba being martyred in one of the battles, his wife and his children should be taken to be carried, and the responsibility to be taken by another Sahabi marrying his wife. Marriage actually here, it was a feeling of responsibility more than it is a desire or it is something. When we are speaking about Umar and Abu Bakr, they already have their wives, but actually when they enter, when they propose to Sayyiddah Salama, it is from what they feel from the responsibility and even for the love of Abu Salama radiallahu anhu, to take care of his wife and to take care of his children. But actually she refused. In recognition of the state of this great woman who devoted herself to her 4 children, when Abu Salama passed away, Salama, she had 4 children from him: Salama, Omar, Zainab, and Durra. Then after that, the Prophet ﷺ offered her marriage. Then she was thinking the same way. She was thinking that the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to be kind for her and for her children. At that time, she was old, she was widowed, she was the mother of 4 children, and she think that this would make the Prophet uncomfortable about that. She felt that she has no attraction a way for making the Prophet to marry her, unless that he feel pity that she is one of the widow of one of the Sahaba that he loved so much. And at the same time, she doesn't want to be burdened on the Prophet ﷺ. Look, I just want you to feel the feelings of the Sahaba toward each other, the men and the women. Yani the men desires for the woman, it's the desire of responsibility, desires of that they want to keep the Muslim society firm and solid. There is nothing to say that a widow or a divorced woman to be alone. She should be actually shielded by a well-respected husband for her and for her children. And even when the Prophet ﷺ proposed to her, because she was very sensitive, she doesn't want to be burdened on the Prophet. What she said, she just sent him a following message to him. She mentioned to him, "O Prophet of Allah, I am a jealous woman. I am old and I have children. Moreover, the guardian to give permission for me to marry is not with me." So she couldn't say, "I don't want to marry you," but she's trying to find justification politely, because she doesn't want to be a burden on the Prophet ﷺ. So in response of these excuses, the Prophet ﷺ responded to her by sending her his reply. "You say you are old. I am older than you. You speak of jealousy. I'll pray to Allah and it's hope that Allah will remove jealousy from you. As far as the children are concerned, they belong to Allah and His Prophet. As far as the guardians who are not here, I don't think that they will oppose this union." So the Prophet ﷺ, in a very smart and intelligent way, he replied to all her excuses and relieved all her concerns and fears. And marriage happened actually between the Prophet and Sayyiddah Salama in the 4th year of Hijrah. And it was 1 year after Uhud battle. And Sayyiddah Salama being blessed with the honor of being a mother of believer, one of the mothers of believers. During the marriage ceremony, the Prophet ﷺ offered walima or wedding feast to the guests, and after the wedding, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ settled Sayyiddah Salama in her home, which was one of the chambers of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. Now regarding part of the characters of Sayyiddah Salama, that she was a wise woman who spoke well, and this being shown actually in her advice to the believers in Hudaybiyah. We're going to have this in details. Sayyiddah Salama was a knowledgeable and cultured woman. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ consulted her with her from time to time, and sometimes act in accordance with her opinion, and actually this is exactly what happened in Hudaybiyah Treaty. In fact, in the 6th year of Hijrah, during the drawing up of Hudaybiyah Treaty that was made with the polytheists of Mecca, Prophet Muhammad asked for her opinion and acted accordingly. And from that time, she was known as the consultant for the Prophet, that he can take, if he wants to take an opinion, he will take the opinion of Sayyiddah Salama. What happened in Al-Hudaybiyah? What was the thing that the Prophet ﷺ took the opinion of Sayyiddah Salama and he acted upon it? The Prophet ﷺ in the 6th year, during the 6th year of Hijrah, he has a dream that he will enter Mecca and to make Umrah in it. So he prepared himself and around 1,500 from the Sahaba wearing the Ihram, and they set for going to Mecca for doing Ihram. And actually this happened 1 year after Ghazwat al-Ahzab, or al-Ahzab battle, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the victory for Muslims. And when all the disbelievers with the Jews, they try to attack al-Madinah and attack the Muslims, and stayed al-Madinah at that time around 1 month under siege. But after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the victory for his prophet and for the companion. So this was the situation. When the Prophet ﷺ marched towards Mecca to make the Umrah, he was prevented by the polytheists. And after long arguments, they made a treaty who drawn up with polytheists, and it was decided to return back to Medina. From the, we mentioned about the Hudaybiyah treaty, it was many points, and from the points that the Muslim to be returned back this year to Medina and to come back next year to Mecca. And a lot of other points we mentioned that the Muslims at that time was not really happy about. Like if the Muslim came from Medina to Mecca, will not be returned back, and the reverse is not right. And if someone of these believers come from Mecca to Medina, it should be returned back to Mecca. And that this treaty will stay for 10 years. But actually, the 2 points, especially the 2 points that made the Sahaba was not happy, that they were not going to make Umrah that day, they will return back to next year, and that if any one Muslim came from Mecca to Medina, they can't take him. They should return him back to Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ actually agreed on these points, and subhanallah, these two points being a great victory, because actually this treaty being broke up by Mecca after 2 years. After 2 years only, Mecca conquest happened during the 8th year of Hijrah. So it was actually a big conquest and a grand victory, great victory for the Muslims. So the conditions of the treaty seem to be against the Muslims. For this reason, everyone, including Umar radiallahu anhu, did not know how to act. The companion was in a state of disappointing. They were disappointed all. They cannot judge properly. They are not in fully known or correct judgment for the things. So what happened? That the Prophet ordered them to sacrifice the animal and shave and take off their ihram. They told them to take off the ihram and to sacrifice the animal. That's tahallul, or the dissolution from the ihram in preparing to return back to Medina. They couldn't not understand, but they couldn't be convinced by that, and convinced that everything finished and we have to return back. When you are in a situation that you have expectation and suddenly all expectation being on the ground, at that time you felt like in imbalance or in disequilibrium. You cannot judge. You don't know what to happen. Like you are dizzy. So what happened with the companion actually? He ordered them, but they didn't obey the order at the beginning. He ordered them to sacrifice and shave and to take off their ihram, but they remained motionless, quietly hoping that the Prophet would abandon the treaty. And the Prophet was very sad, and he was not happy by their behavior at all, and headed towards his tent. And at that time, Sayyiddah Ummu Salama was with him. So he told her, Ummu Salama, halak al-qawm. Halak al-qawm means that they will go astray. They will go astray. They will be like the disbelievers. So Sayyiddah Ummu Salama told him, why, ya Rasulullah, why, O Prophet of Allah? He told her, they didn't obey my order. I ordered them to remove their ihram and to prepare for going back to Medina. They didn't obey my order. So here we can feel the character and the personality of Sayyiddah Ummu Salama radiallahu anha, how she was wise, how she was knowledgeable, and how she can, in the middle of this situation where the Prophet was sad and he doesn't know what to do. This is the first time that he ordered a Muslim and they are not obeying from the first time. The situation that even the believers are in this equilibrium state, they cannot judge properly. They hoped something and suddenly it was on the ground. She was the only one who judged it properly at that situation. She told the Prophet ﷺ, "O Prophet of Allah, forgive them." Now what she did actually, this is the way, and she's actually is, let us learn from her. Let us learn from her. What is she did? That she put herself in their position. She put herself in their feelings and their position, that they coming doing ihram and they hoping to make umrah. And this is what she mentioned to him. They hoped that they would be able to circumambulate the Kaaba, to make tawaf around the Kaaba this year. Not only have they realized that this hope was in vain, but a treaty that fulfills the wishes of polytheists has been made. You should. So she's now trying to explain for the Prophet why they are doing that. They are not disobeying you because they are arrogant or they don't want to disobey. No, she is explaining to him the background, why they are doing that, which is very intelligent, actually, very intelligent way of judging. Because if you want to judge on someone, you have to put yourself in his shoes in order to know why he is thinking like that. And this is actually what our mother Ummu Salama, she did. And then after she explained to the Prophet the situation, she offered him the solution. What is the solution? You should go and slaughter a sacrificial animal and shave. When they see you do this, they will follow your lead. And this is actually what happened. This is actually what happened. The Prophet ﷺ, he went out from his tent and he sacrificed his animal and he shaved his hair, and he started to have his clothes and take out ihram. And when the companions saw him like that, doing that, all of them started to make the same thing, and they started to wake up from this equilibrium state that they have. But how they didn't obey from, they even, this is mentioned or narrated by the companions themselves, how they didn't obey from the first time, how they didn't obey the Prophet from the first time. So the Prophet ﷺ left the tent and acted as Sayyiddah Ummu Salama had suggested, and the companion, understanding that the treaty was not be broken, followed suit and made the sacrifice and shaved. So by Hudaybiyah, we can feel how much our mother Salama was sensitive. In this sensitive time, she was able to analyze the situation using her intelligence, perception, and courage, and thus the matter ended happily in a way which upset no one. Now, it's not only Hudaybiyah. Sayyiddah Ummu Salama was accompanying the Prophet in many hard times, in many wars, like in the Khaybar campaign and the conquest of Mecca, the siege of Taif, the battle of Hawazin and Saqif, and she was accompanying the Prophet in most of the battles. She was very courageous and modesty, while at the same time being resolute, brave, and wise, as we mentioned, and how she helped the Prophet in many things. Another thing with the Sayyiddah Ummu Salama happened that she saw Jibreel. She saw Jibreel. How she saw Jibreel, this is what we're going to have inshallah next time. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.